All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Thursday, December 5th. We got one more day of the trading week to go. So, theme of the day trade talks are going well. That's kind of my little joke for the day. I think everybody at this point is a bit tired of the trade rhetoric going back and forth, right? So we'll know eventually because it's December 5th, and the new tariffs are supposed to go into effect on December 15th. My prediction, if I so choose, make a prediction, is that they probably push them back. The administration probably pushes them back as good faith to see if they can, so we can hear 3 more months of trade headlines. I'm just kidding. That's my guess. I think really the sticking point, which I think I've said in a video earlier this week, is that I think China is not going to necessarily buy ag products until they roll back tariffs, not with forget about the December 15th. So I think that's the real question. But I do think unless something really negative happens between the discussion, or unless like the administration just is in a bad mood that they want to actually put the irons to the U.S. people regarding the tariffs. Sorry, but that's how the tariffs work. When you increase tariffs, the U.S. either U.S. companies or U.S. consumers have to pay for them, not the international party. Now they may suffer because the U.S. consumers, U.S. businesses may substitute and go to another country to get cheaper products, but that is the danger for them. But it's ultimately a cost on the U.S. side. So anyway, without getting too drawn into that, because I want to move on to trading, but that's just the environment that we're living right now. We are getting a little bit whipsawed depending on what the headline is. So altogether, I thought it was a choppy day just from the beginning. This is what I sent out earlier to members, and something that I put in the trading room as well. I said I just don't have a strong feel for the day. Right, you're gonna come across those days where sometimes you really have a good feel for the day, and you've got what's called conviction. I did not have major conviction today. There's no, in my opinion, right? You're just not going to have conviction every day and say, okay, I'm going to find the winning trade today, out of, depending on what the tape is doing. I think in trading, you want to be realistic and just realize that some days that the trading opportunities just may not be there. Remember, again, if you're trading options, which I know a lot of you are, and instead of stock, which and I say this a lot. Usually, I say it when we get a choppy day, but when you have a choppy day, being in stock, it's just kind of a boring day. If you have a choppy day and you're in options, you're going to feel the pain because you have theta decay, right? The clock is always running against your option positions. So if you don't get a fast, aggressive move in the direction that you're looking for, right? Remember, with options, you have to get two things right. You have to get the direction right, and you have to get the timing right. And if we just and if you have a couple choppy days, you're just going to bleed premium a little bit. So, and I'm holding some option positions too, so I feel the brunt of that too in positions that, in names that are just kind of chopping back and forth. So, but that was my thought. We're also continuing to see what I think is hedging going on. We're seeing some decent sized Qs puts. That's 2 days in a row. Also seeing some SPY puts go up as well. Again, pretty decent stuff going out, a month or a couple months away. So it looks like someone at this point, and maybe a few different parties are just thinking that, hey, I want to lock in some gains up here and have some protection on, right? And with the VIX, where did the VIX close today? 14 and change, 1450. I think that's fine. All right, so that's kind of overall market, feel, which I think, again, I always start with kind of like that top-down approach, right? Overall, just kind of figuring out what the investment landscape is for the day, and that kind of helps me, judge what type of risk I'm going to take for the day and for the week and so on, right? That overshadows or outweighs what I'm thinking about in individual stocks, right? So I think that was the right thing today. Today, this was the like I said, it's obviously Thursday, but this is the least trading that I've done all week. You could see I really just didn't do a lot today. It's fine. You should have days when you don't trade at all or trade very little. Even if there's not, again, nothing wrong with that. That's the other comment that I made was it's better to not trade just to trade, right? So anyway, I'll move on. I want to talk about some of today's moves. Well, the number one performer on the day, or biggest mover from open to close, was ITB. That's a group that I'm in. I was on Bloomberg last Tuesday on their Option Insight program, talking about what I like, in terms of a trade idea. And I mentioned the Home Builders ETF. It's actually called Home Construction, but it's really the Home Builders ETF. So ITB, it's trying to resolve itself to the upside here. So I could have taken a target today, like a really slim target, because I was a little bit underwater in this position from the time that I put it on. I added somewhere in here. I think I added 2 days ago. So I think I added on this day. So I'm up a little bit in the position. And I did not take a target today, so I'm hoping that we've got a little bit of move. Sometimes I like to hit that first target, but I just decided to hold off from doing so. Gold miners also did okay today. They had a little bit of strength early on. I think they faded towards the end of the day. They just ended up 0.5%. So again, just a lot of choppiness. You could see silver out of my macro screen up here. Silver actually moved the most from open to close. I think that started the day down. Yeah, it started in the red. Bonds kind of moved up a little bit from the day, but they're still finished down 0.5%. So no major panic there. And you could see all the four major indices, or all the four major ones that I look at: SPYs, Qs, Diamonds, IWM, all finished a little bit lower than the open today. Chinese internets did okay today. BABA had a really nice day today, and then interesting on the downside. And then I'll go into a couple of charts here and the indices and my thoughts on those, as well as today's option activity, which was pretty quiet. But oil stocks, I've been talking about whether or not I wanted to get involved in those, even for like a small play. I have not put anything on in energy for the OPEC. If I did anyway, it was going to be a small trade, which is what I've been talking about. But I just decided not to get involved in that one. Biotech finally had a down day. Or underperforming day. Sage, I think, did that basically. I think this is a really good reminder right now for what we've seen in the last couple of weeks in biotech. Sage came out and literally, I don't know, I said this probably like 5 times. Oh, look at that, all the way down to the VPOC. But just a reminder what some of these drug names, these biotech names can do when they miss a study. They get obliterated, right? Or they get smoked is what I like to say. But, just keep in mind, because, there's been a couple ones that have come out, like AUPH yesterday, and, they knocked the socks off the cover with the study. But it doesn't mean that it's just because one or two go positive, that doesn't mean they're all independent of one another, right? There's no correlation with one another with these names reporting, so you have to watch it. I mean, luckily I was not in this one, but I've been in ones before where there's a study happens and you're like, oh geez, So there's option activity today, a little bit more in GBT, which has been absolutely ripping up to 76. Another one, ARQL, which I think has data on Monday. Saw a whole bunch of calls today. It's a $9 stock, so this one, like, if you buy, let's say, 100 shares, right around $1,000 and a little under $1,000 investment, you can only lose $1,000 if they miss the study, right? So that's the way you have to do it. Or, because the calls are really expensive. Like the call volume today in ARQL was crazy. But you have to know, some traders I think who are newer to looking at options don't look at implied volatility, but you want to make sure like you're looking to see how much what the price the what the implied volatility is, right? Which kind of which goes into the pricing of the option. If for 11 strike call, which is up there at that VPOC, you just have to realize how much those options are costing, because again, I think the implied volatility, I don't have it up right this second, but I think ARQL, the implied volatility was around like a 200%. So these are not cheap. So the other way that you could do it is you could take a shot and just like with option premium, you should really, in my opinion, only be putting in what you're willing to risk when you buy option premium. So same thing, if you want to go long stock, you could only lose $9, because sure enough, like if this thing misses a big study, again, I don't know this name very well, but normally what happens is when it misses and like they only have one drug, and again, I don't know if this name has other drugs, but it goes down to like a penny stock if it misses the study. So I've seen it before. I know you probably have seen this too, but it's good to just realize the risk involved in something like that. So that did I think that did in biotech for the day. It's probably due for a little bit of digestion. XPI, not even down that much. So we'll kind of see if this ends up being a buying opportunity, if the group still has momentum. I would basically say if you want to trade this, use this version point of control at 91.75 would be the level to trade against. If it starts to break below that, then we could basically come back and maybe look at this gap down here. So I would definitely keep your if you're still trafficking in biotech right now, I would really be cognizant of your stops, because it is a very fast and aggressive mover, right? XLV, on the other hand, did quite fine today, finished basically unched 0.0. What else did I want to say? There was something else that I wanted to say in biotech. Oh yeah, I mean, in some of the other names, some of the names that first kind of got this rally going. Look at what's going on with Clovis. This thing is down like 50% from the highs. It's close, maybe down about 40%. But I mean, once the wind comes out of the sails in these names, they fall right back down. I think that's probably close enough to this VPOC taken out. This was within a few pennies, I think, but interesting how that works with the version point of control. I was trying to show some examples of that on Twitter, but so yeah, make sure when you're in these things, you really have to monitor them very closely. Again, I didn't say in the beginning, but everything, of course, we're going over is for information purposes only, not telling you what to do or giving any recommendations, anything like that. So there you go. I wanted to spend a couple minutes on biotech. In terms of the overall market, I didn't go over an S&P chart, but something that we went over pre-market, we're kind of locked inside value for now. This is where we were pre-market. One thing to notice, it seems like in the beginning of the day, we are seeing some volatility, right? This hasn't happened for a while, for a couple months, where futures are bid up a little bit pre-market and just boom, like waterfall down as soon as the market opens, right? I feel like we did this, was it yesterday too? Where did we start yesterday? No, yesterday we didn't have that problem. Maybe it was 2 days ago. Yeah, right, and we did that. That was a different circumstance, but still, I don't really like to see that, right? Where we kind of start the day and just have a difficult time finding a footing for the whole day. All right, so regardless, we basically finished unched for the day. So it did give you, if you held your nose and bought some things on the low today, maybe you did have a decent day. I just didn't really have the conviction to step in and do that today. And I think I honestly want to, more than like following the headlines and that type of thing, I really, want to see what happens here with price. I want to see us reclaim, call it 3,120, right? We talked about these levels too in yesterday's video, but that's basically what I'm looking at to see if we can move out of range. All right, so moving on, video's about 15 minutes old. Um, I did mention ITB already, right? So yes, this was the best performing group in terms of performance, beginning to open to close. Also, a couple other names that we went over. Mondelez, I did go ahead and take a target in this one today. I added a new swing trade. Just this was something that I made a point of this morning as well in the pre-market session. If you notice what groups are closing on the highs right now. Obviously that home builders was one of them, but it's a little bit more defensives, right? I started to notice this a couple days ago with the XLP ETF, right? Consumer staples. This one finished flat on the day, but a couple days, right? It closed on the highs, then had a doji, like similar looking candle 2 days ago, then closed on the highs yesterday. So, there's a few, it seems like what has come back in vogue here in the short term is more defensive type names. I was looking at AWK today as well today, right? This is, I think, a little bit more of a defensive name. That's a really nice looking setup on the daily chart. So I think pretty interesting. And if you look at the chart, this is a chart that I like to revisit every once in a while. If we look at oh, I thought I had the chart up, but I don't. But if we look at low volatility equities and how they're performing, so that's either USMV or SPLV versus higher beta names. So I have this one in here, higher beta versus low volatility, right? So this in this case, I have low volatility in the numerator, and I've got high beta in the denominator. So for the better part of 2019, even though it's kind of come in phases, up until October, lower volatility names, right? So names like consumer staples, utilities, healthcare, software names, uh, less trade sensitive names have performed better until we got to October, right? And still until they started to make that progress on talking trade talks, right? And I've talked about this before, how I think it's a probability game, right? So once they started to kind of uh, start to talk more and more and to start to make some headway in trade negotiations, we started to see higher beta names outperform, and that was this. But you could see for the last week, the two have been kind of back and forth, and it could be low volatility, just like I'm looking at consumer staples and things like American Water Company. We're starting to see some changing at the guards in terms of market leadership. So it's in the short term, but I would be mindful of that. So I'll leave it there for the day. Besides that, option activity. So again, I traded very little today. I did put on one swing trade in Mondelez. FIS continues to see call activity. There's another big block. I think this chart looks okay. Just keep in mind, this has been an underperformer. So maybe it eventually does something. They've been buying April calls, but this has been an underperformer to the rest of the market. So if you've been following, and this is how it goes sometimes, when you follow option activity, sometimes if it doesn't do anything, like this name hasn't really done anything, you have opportunity cost, right? You're losing out when the rest of the market goes and a name that saw option activity doesn't go, right? And that sometimes I know that happens. I know nobody on Twitter thinks that, but I'm just kidding. Lennar saw some calls. I have an asterisk there because of open interest. And then, like I said, we saw some ARQL, which is, I think, based on that study that's going to come out. GBT Crocs for the second day in a row saw a little bit of momentum calls. And I mentioned the puts as well. So that's it for the day. We'll see what we get in terms of a Friday for tomorrow. I'm positioned long, but I do have a little bit of a hedge in place at this point. But I'm kind of changing. I'm trying to change a little bit how I'm being positioned. Maybe changing a little bit away from aggressive higher beta names to more names like Mondelez. All right, guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.